Hello.
Hello, everyone. Looks like people are all joining rapidly right now. I'll give it just a few moments here.
Hello.
All right, we're two past. I am going to go ahead and start things up. Just a reminder, I have been remiss to mention this at the beginning of previous meetings, but this meeting is recorded and we do post it to YouTube so the broader Kubernetes community can see and understand what we're doing. So just keep that in mind. Don't expect to have any issues on this call given the set of people who attend, but just to make it explicit. These are public meetings. So kind of the typical standing agenda for where we are right now, just going to go over features a bit, bugs, and CI signals. So our features lead has indicated earlier this morning that he is unable to attend, but had sent a note in the Slack channel in SIG release mentioning that there are as many as 66 features now. We had 3 that are going to be exceptions that came through last week, which is not completely unexpected. There's always a few things that trickle in. So there's some work there to go through and scan things, and potentially one also that was additionally something that might be at risk. So we need to tighten that up a little bit this week, and I'm hoping then at next week's meeting that we have maybe Stephen able to give a little bit of an overview of that list and summarize it a bit for us. So do any of the features lead shadows have anything that they would like to mention there?
No, I'm just glad that it's over because the email box has been flooded.
Lots of pinging and poking.
Absolutely.
So, okay, then the next thing that I want to talk about, and I just saw that Caitlin joined. Usually around this point in the cadence, we have a blog post that goes out to the Kubernetes blog, and it kind of gives a sense of what's coming in terms of potential features. It's obviously still early, and as much as we've hit feature freeze, that doesn't mean that everything's going to make it. So there's a balance there between advertising that things are coming and starting to set expectations versus creating potentially unmet expectations in the future. So, Caitlin, are there things that you need from the team in terms of feeding more information into that, or is it something that you're going to be starting this week, or where do we stand on that?
So we actually eliminated this blog post from the release process last release.
Did we? Okay.
Yes. I might have missed that in the schedule.
Gotcha. All right.
Just because it caused some confusion with the messaging and everything. So we decided to just focus on the release announcement blog post. And so for that, we are syncing up next Thursday to determine the features that we're going to highlight, and then we'll have the draft the following week.
Okay.
Do you mind, for my benefit, articulating sort of what the confusion was around messaging, or what the issue was we've decided to avoid?
Yeah, so we basically putting out all of those features, that essentially became what the media was using for the articles and stuff that they put out alongside the release, but then not all of those features made it into the actual release itself. So we actually found that we were kind of having to backtrack and correct some of this messaging with the updated features. So it ended up causing more work for us, I think, than it ended up being worth.
Okay, thanks.
Do you think it makes sense still to give any sort of a lightweight treatment at this point to potential themes, or still just like wait until the end?
Personally, I'm partial to waiting to the end just because that's worked really well for us, but I'm open to any other opinions there as well.
One thing that we talked about in the past is a sort of unofficial one. I mean, the problem with the previous one was that it was, quote, official.
Mhm.
So we had talked about doing a sort of unofficial one, so that kind of gives that gives the community a little bit of air cover should things not land. And that's something that I was actually thinking about writing anyway. So if we can figure out where we might want to publish it within the community, we can certainly do that. Well, like I said, I was going to write it anyway, so we might as well make use of it within the community as well, if that's useful.
And Nick, did you do that for 1.11? I can't remember now.
I didn't because I ran out of time. It was my intention to do it, but I did not.
Yeah, maybe let's chat about that a little bit further after this meeting. I think it'd be hard to then put that on the Kubernetes blog and not make that the official messaging.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah. So I just don't know where else.
Well, I was going to publish it to the Morantis blog,
Mm-hmm.
but if there's somewhere else within the community that is going to be useful to the community, like, in the dev list or, something like that, then, we could also put it there, is what I'm saying.
I don't see anything wrong with you putting a link to that on KDev at a minimum, and I think Josh Burkus is likely to pick it up for his last week in Kubernetes, and I would probably echo it in my semi-weekly update on the release, even if it's not on the official Kate's blog. Then it gives a little bit of visibility in a lightweight way. I think I get the sensitivity in how the media may latch on to things thinking like this is what's coming, but part of this I feel like is for the community to give them a sense of themes, and not everybody's going to go look at the feature spreadsheet, but if somebody happens to read a blog post and say, oh wait, that feature kind of overlaps with something I'm working on, I should go talk to these other developers. That cross communication is actually important in the developer community.
Yeah, and I will make it very clear in the blog that this is very early days, and this is not an official tally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Yeah, that sounds great to me.
Okay, cool.
So Nick, feel free to reach out to me if you need any help with that then.
Yeah, sure. Ditto. You got it. Thank you.
All right, then that brings us to bugs. Just glancing to see, I don't think I saw Gwen on the line. I do see that stuff got dropped into the meeting minutes. Was one of the shadows going to speak to any of that today?
Yeah, in fact, Gwen is on vacation all this week. So she asked me to do the bug reports. And from the last week, there are no really big change, just only a few bugs related to the CI signal. So I don't think there are something to report this week. Nothing very big.
Okay, well then that makes it easy because the CI signal was next up on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So as far as CI signal is concerned, I would say so the master blocking is mostly stabilizing. There is one more one more failure happening there. There are a few failures on master upgrade though. The QBDM issue that was there, it has finally gone green, so that's good. Then I already closed it. So most of the failures now on upgrading are on the 1.1 in parallel cluster upgrade and stuff like that. So we are getting close to greener CI, but I would say we are somewhere in a green yellow status. Like, there are still a few failing tests in the upgrade especially. So I'm not sure if there are any more blocking tests. I think I'm trying to touch up on people, so there have been a few more follow-ups. There are still a couple of tests on which follow-up has not happened yet. There have been not replies on that. I will link those tests on the on meeting up meeting notes in a bit. But otherwise, that's what the status is.
Okay, yeah, if you update on that in the notes, then I and perhaps Aish, we can, and since we've got time zone overlap, we can try and do a little bit of poking on people as well and see if we can raise a response on those couple.
Yeah, sounds good. Just one thing is, I do see a lot of GKE upgrade failures versus GCI, so it'll be helpful to see if it's a GKE only issue, and in that case, yeah, make a distinction if it's going to be blocking anything or not.
Okay. Yeah, I think GK is issue is something that most likely we are not going to look at, right?
Sorry?
If it's only GK, if it's only GK, it's not something that we need to look at, right?
We still need to follow up, but probably worst case, if it still persists, it might not block our alpha or beta cuts, but we still might need to look into, make sure the right people get attention of those.
Yeah. Yes, sure. I'll definitely get that filter. Like I'll try to make sure that I cut down the rest which are only GC related and update that as well.
All right, and Aaron, was that your question in the chat, or who is SIG testing?
Yeah, that was me. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It does that thing where, like, since I signed in as SIG testing one time, way back when, it signs me in as SIG testing for any meeting that's hosted by somebody who has a Google Groups account under the same billing account. It's great.
It's a interesting feature.
So my question, the general form of my question was one of like historical context. We have 66 features as of today. So as of feature freeze, do we know how many features we had in as of feature freeze last time?
I haven't gone and done comparison, but I feel like this is higher than the last couple of releases.
If we look at the last release of what actually made it in, I think it's in the low 30s, something like that.
So this is sort of a point I wanted to just try and illustrate here, is that we can go right now today, do a query and see how many features or whatever like made it in by the time we finally shipped. But to give us a better sense of where we are today, how we are doing today, I'd love to know how this compares to where we were at this time last release cycle. And I don't actually know how we can better keep track of our stuff in order to quickly make these sorts of assessments. I often hear questions in the form of, at this point in the release, does anybody remember like how many open issues we had or how many bugs we had or whatever? And like, that's not something you can actually quickly craft a GitHub issue query to find out. I have no idea if anybody's been keeping track of stuff like that.
The way I've been trying to get a sense of that historical stuff is going and looking at places where we had recorded those point in time. So like in the 1.11 release meeting, Google Docs notes and those sorts of things, because usually we end up with a little bit of something there. So like looking back, April 23rd, there were 45. So that would have been around, just double check, I think that was around feature freeze. But I feel like the number anecdotally feels higher to me, but it also feels like we had more that just sort of kind of carried over. Like we're sort of kind of in this range of 20 to 30 that carry over from release to release, and then either a subset of those get created or get done or carry on to the next one. So there's this sort of this chunk that's sort of just on the front edge of that wave that just keeps.
Totally. Paradoxically, even though like July seems to be the month of summer vacation for everybody, at least that I seem to interact with, like it's actually Q3 has been the most productive quarter for the past 3 years, according to Dev Stats. So that actually, like maybe it being higher seems okay. It still seems wild to me that like it's so much higher than what we actually released last time, but I'm curious to see what we actually release.
Yeah, that's the big question. I think as the list of stuff kind of ratcheted up in the last 2 weeks, that started causing me a little bit of worry. Like, is this going to be a super active release? But then also so much of it felt like it was the kind of carry forward stuff. I'm a little skeptical at this point how much of that list of now 66 things is going to actually get done.
Right. The other random question I had, since I heard somebody complain about their inbox and being glad that something is finally over, did anybody notice that we turned off the milestone Munger bot?
So I was going to actually add, that was my next question for you, was did it actually get turned off? And I haven't noticed because I think I have all of, like, I've trained myself to ignore it.
Yeah, well, we did. It happened on Friday. So I don't know if it actually hit, if it happened in time to get Friday morning's notifications, but I was tempted to not tell you and just see what happens in some sort of experiment, but now I've told you, so I've ruined that. And if anybody, I'm looking especially in the direction of CI signal and issue triage. If you're finding life is more complicated, let's chat. That's part of the reason I keep showing up to this meeting. And also just to close the loop, since this was a decision that was made during the SIG release meeting, which happens separately from the release team meeting, but it seemed like it had a lot of impact to this release team. So anyway, any questions? Let's chat about it on SIG release.
And I'll keep an eye out for it as well. It'll be an interesting experiment over the next, I feel like, 4 or 5 weeks. As we lead up to the release, we'll know if we got ourselves into trouble, I suspect. Well, this has been a relatively quick meeting. It kind of makes sense, I guess, given that we're almost smack dab in the middle of the release cycle, looking up at my calendar. We have basically 4 weeks now until code freeze. And this will be a period where we are kind of collectively looking at those features going by in terms of implementation, PRs, bug issues, and CI signal, and starting to formulate more concretely our sense of risk and complexity in the release. Do we have 66 features that are large and actively under development and major test destabilization, or do a good chunk of those fall away and it becomes simpler? So I guess my main thing that I would say going forward for the next couple of weeks is to really try and keep a proactive eye on these things and get an early warning if you're, or make an early shout out of a warning if you're starting to see something that seems worrying. And especially for all the new people on the team, feel empowered to note that. Like, I'm confused by something or a little worried by something, because new eyes bring different perspective. And one of the great things about how this team operates is that we are a set of people whose all of our eyes help give some shallowness to the potential problems. Zach, is there anything that you want to mention on docs relative to those features?
I don't see anything at present. We're still tracking everything in the Airtable as far as what's going on. We have a few weeks, I think 3 if I remember correctly, until docs PRs need to be at least open. So right now I'm just managing the branch in the website repo, keeping it up with master, because we're doing a lot of refactoring with the Hugo migration and internationalization that's going on in preparation for KubeCon China, and obviously Kubernetes is a global effort now. So so that's mostly what's going on, is we're just kind of keeping things over there and keeping our eye on inbound pull requests that aren't associated with features, but that could probably use documentation. I welcome anyone's feedback. I'll pop the link in the chat again on what you think could be improved about it. I know we talked about potentially using this for more than just documentation, but even if you notice here, you're like, hey, this actually does not need docs or does need docs, then that would be awesome. I would appreciate that. So there's the link. It's in the chat. That's all I got.
All right. Anything else that anybody wants to bring up today? Oh, I guess I didn't. I just noticed Doug McCackern joined. I didn't mention, because this happened after last week's meetings, we actually cut a release, the Alpha 1 release. So Alpha 0 gets created sort of automatically in the prior cycle due to reasons. But Doug was able to cut a release. We had a few issues that came up. The documentation and the process are both evolving quite a bit right now. So we had, instead of the maybe sort of hour to 2 hours to make a release, we were dabbling and stumbling our way through it for about 2 days, and out popped a release late on Wednesday, if I recall correctly. And I think based on that, we have the process kind of better documented, I hope. So the next release milestone will be the beta release, and for the branch manager shadows, we'll pull you in. Doug and I kind of tried to shield you from the stumbling and bumbling around at first, because we basically had a multi-page document that we're for all intents and purposes now throwing away and almost 100% replacing with another multi-page document on how the branch management happens. And we think, based on our stumbling and bumbling through, that this new one is accurate. So we'll try and follow it and note if there's any minor changes that need made there. But I'm pretty comfortable now going forward that we're in a better position there. And I think depending on vacations, we may actually have one of the branch manager shadows cut one of the subsequent releases as well. So we're making some nice progress there. And the really cool thing to note there is that previously, all of the releases have been made in terms of the mechanics of cutting the release and the artifacts popping out on the web. That stuff for build and publication has all had to have been done by Google folks. So Caleb's got a bunch of work that has happened that he's helped drive behind the scenes at Google to update the process there, and some of the other Google folks. So it seems like it actually works. We were able, Doug, as somebody new and completely non-Google, was able to make a release. So that's a really positive change in terms of bringing stuff a little more out from behind the Google wall and fully into the community.
That's like awesome. Yeah, it's awesome to see you guys just pull that through. Thanks a lot. And yeah, hopefully to seeing many more non-Googlers cut this.
Yeah, it should, from now on, it should be the norm, right?
Yeah, I think it went pretty smooth. The main issue, funnily enough, was the email. So I don't know about anyone else here, but I haven't used a local MTA to send mail for years. And then I tried to do it manually and didn't even think about it. I copy and pasted the generated HTML, and of course it came through as is the first time. So I'll have to up my email game for next time, but everything else is, thanks to Caleb and everyone else that was involved with that. I think it's going to be really solid going forward.
All right, anything that anybody wants to share or bring up, questions, comments?
I had one more tiny thing, since I think this was also discussed at the last SIG release meeting, but not here. I want to add a quick milestone to this release schedule where the test info role formally deprecates and removes all of the release branches for, oh, good grief, I should have the number locked and loaded here. I want to say 1.8.
Yes, I believe.
Technically, 1.8 is more than 3 releases back right now, and so we don't really need to have ongoing CI support for it. We are still capable of cutting a release off the branch for security purposes, but we're going to shift everything forward in lockstep, and I'm proposing to make this just a part of the standard release schedule and set of responsibilities for test info. So look for a PR to the schedule later. I don't think anybody here really cares, but just a heads up.
I think I would say I care, because I really like that it's not just a let's turn this off, but let's put it in the schedule, because we copy paste sort of the schedule each time forward, that becomes a regular reminder to the release lead and test info folks that this is something we do explicitly at a certain time. And then for the rest of the community or downstream derivatives, the distros and vendors, to know that that's the point at which it goes away.
Five minutes of my life back.
All right. Anybody, anything else? Shall we call it a day? And I'll mention that so we will be having the meeting tomorrow morning, early Pacific time, which is a little bit earlier for European folks and a better time for China. So far, that seems to have been working. We've been having constructive conversation and pulling in a slightly disjoint set of people, more of the shadows as well. So I think initially we said we'd do this sort of as an initial experiment for a couple of weeks, but I'm going to go ahead and send out an invite to do that through the rest of the cycle. just as a heads up for folks. And you're welcome to attend either meeting as long as we've got, between the leads and shadows, some coverage and we're getting good conversation and sharing. So just FYI. All right. Have a great Monday, everybody. And then for those who are attending the second meeting tomorrow, we'll repeat a set of this tomorrow.
See ya.
Happy Monday.
It's a day.